You're listening to ADHD Support Talk. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by addclasses.com. Visit addclasses.com and sign up for helpful online events and resources today. I want to welcome you back to ADHD Support Talk. I'm your co-host, Lynn Idris, and I am a productivity and ADHD coach. So I help professionals take control of their days and show up as they intend more easily so that they perform at the level of their abilities with more time, energy, and bandwidth for the things that matter most to them. I am a woman with ADHD myself, guys, so I've been there, I've done that, and I ought to have plenty of those t-shirts. I have been where so many of my clients are and where so many of you are, and I've come out the other side, so to speak. You know, ADHD doesn't go away, but you sure can learn how to live well with it. So I've gone from living in that constant overwhelm and chaos and feeling of underperformance to a life full of success and fulfillment that I at one point didn't think was possible for myself. And I really do believe that every single one of you can share your own version of success as well. You can learn more about me and what I do at www.coachingadvantages.com. And when you text the keyword hack, that's HACK, to the number 33777, I'll send you my 7 foolproof productivity hacks to help you add hours of free time to your weeks by investing just a few smart minutes each day. Well, today I want to talk about something that comes up for a lot of my clients and can be quite damaging to their quality of life and peace of mind. So I'm talking about the inner stories adults with ADHD get stuck on, the things we tell ourselves, and ruminations. So to be clear, I'm talking about when we awfulize, when we catastrophize, when we brood, when we have a negative thought or a scenario that we run over and over and over and over in our brains. Okay. Again, we call this rumination. I call it inner stories. I call it, awfulizing or catastrophizing. So this is when we can get ourselves stuck on something that happened, sometimes turning it into something that it doesn't need to be. So awfulizing or catastrophizing, that's where that kind of comes in, making assumptions, telling yourself, again, stories about, why something is happening or how poorly something is going to go. So you really do feel like you're stuck and maybe even spiraling in kind of a whirlwind or a vortex of what could go wrong, what might be wrong, why things won't work out, why you can't be successful, telling yourself things, making assumptions about how other people are going to behave or what other people are going to do or what you can expect in a way that is more worry focused and not problem solving focused, not solution focused. So this is when we tell ourselves things like, oh, they don't like me, or this person isn't returning my call or isn't responding to my text because they're mad at me, or I saw that look that so-and-so gave me at dinner and that means that she doesn't like me and our friendship is over. Or sometimes we can have scenarios, we can have things that happen and we turn them into so much more than they need to be in our mind, right? So it really is kind of like that spinning of a story or that spinning of a thought or a scenario that we have a really hard time letting go of. Okay. Again, we call that a rumination or a ruminating thought. So they, again, are more worry focused and not searching for solution focused. So when your analytical brain gets stuck on something and you're looking for a solution or a way to solve the problem, that can be a really healthy and a really helpful thing. But we're talking about worry focused that is not problem solving focused. All right. It's really common with adults with ADHD, right? There are lots of reasons that we do this. We get stuck in these ruminations because our ADHD brains are always looking for stimulation. And for some of us, the most stimulating thing in the moment is those negative thoughts and worries that come up, right? So they get stuck and they tend to kind of grow and gain energy and morph, right? The reason they morph is because the human brain is wired to always look for something that proves what you're focusing on. So your brain looks for proof to reinforce what you're paying attention to. So if you're thinking about, so-and-so is mad at me because she gave me that look, and you're focused on it, your brain is going to go back into your memory and look for all of the other times that something like that may have happened, or that you may have thought that happened. It may be that you notice, other things that that person has done that would reinforce and kind of help you. I'm using my quotey fingers, you can't see, help you prove that that's what's really going on, right? So this is, again, the same brain that is so good at analyzing, the same brain that is so good at out of the box thinking and creative idea generating and problem solving. That same brain is also really good at spinning these kinds of tales and stories in your mind. Okay. And I often tell my clients, once they are kind of in your mind and you're starting to pay more attention to them, they will snowball, they will grow, kind of like a snowball rolling down a mountain, right? So I want to give you some strategies. I want to help you think about what's really going on so that you don't find yourself stuck here. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of rumination or the kind of stuck thoughts that come with things like maybe OCD or other kinds of mental health conditions. If you know that your ruminations, if you know that your thoughts are getting stuck, your stories you're telling yourself are getting stuck, and that is getting in the way of your quality of life, that is having a negative impact on your life, please make sure that you talk to your doctor or your licensed mental health professional. What I'm talking about here today is common ADHD ruminations and the kind of the stories we spin in our brains. Right? So the first thing you need to do is obviously notice it, right? We really don't want to just let what's going on stay in our head and grow and morph and continue to cause us pain and angst and anxiety and everything else. So for some of us, depending on what's going on, distracting yourself can help, but it's often not a permanent solution. But it's a place to start, right? We call that a pattern interrupt. You want to interrupt the pattern of the rumination. So, try a change of scenery, try distracting yourself. One of the things that can be really helpful in terms of refocusing what your brain is paying attention to is to focus on your body, right? We call this body awareness. There are different names for it, but do a quick body scan. What are you feeling physically right now? Shift your awareness, shift your focus from your mind, from your thoughts to your body. What's going on in your environment? And it could really help if you give yourself a change of scenery and even go outside if at all possible. But changing your focus, especially to something that is on other sensations, and focusing on your body, increasing your body awareness, that's tip number one. Tip number two is, again, you can't just let this be and tell yourself you shouldn't think it. That often isn't going to work. So if you distract yourself, if you have a change of focus and your focus on body awareness and your change of environment doesn't really help, right? Then it's really important that you pause and start to question it. Really pay attention to what you're thinking. Make those thoughts conscious. As long as they live in your mind, they're going to become something they don't need to become, right? So I often tell my clients, get it out of your head, right? Like literally get it out of your head, and get it out of your head in terms of shining like the bright light on it, right? I always think of these kinds of things, especially when it comes to ruminations and stories we tell ourselves, they're like the monster under the bed, right? Once you can shine a light on what's under the bed, you can see that it's your bunny slippers and not a scary monster, right? And you can start to question it. So number two is to question it. Have an internal dialogue. Get super clear on what it is that what's the story that you're telling yourself, right? Say it out loud, write it down, something like that. Get really clear, think it consciously, and then question it. Have a full-on internal dialogue, right? I always say, like, insist on the facts and only the facts. Play investigative reporter with yourself. play what I call, the what else could it be game. This is a game that I played with my kids a lot when they were younger, especially my son with ADHD. He would make assumptions like, that teacher doesn't like me. Mr. So-and-so doesn't like me. And I would say, really, why do you say that? And he would say, oh, I can tell he doesn't like me. He was really, grouchy with me today, or he was, whatever. He'd give some reason that in his young mind was, proof that that teacher didn't like him. So I taught him to play the what else could it be game. So I would say, well, what else could it be? What else would cause Mr. So-and-so to behave that way, or say those kinds of things, or seem grouchy toward you? And start to kind of excavate all the other scenarios that could be coming into play. You don't know what's happening in someone else's world. You don't know what's happening in someone else's mind, right? So when you can shift that, you can start to question it and have that internal dialogue. You can diffuse that energy, that stimulation that's causing it to stay stuck and to kind of grow and morph, right? So question it. As I said, play investigative reporter. Right? What could this really be about? What could really be going on here? I have simple things that I tell myself to remind myself not to listen to everything that's in my head, right? So I will say, and I can't remember what this is from, to be honest with you. If anybody remembers, tell me in the comments here, or put it in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook community for me. But there was a detective that used to say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So I will say that to myself when something is whirling and I'm making assumptions, and I can recognize that it's a rumination. And then I also ask myself, like, where's the proof? Back in that old, I think it was 80s or 90s, Wendy's restaurant commercial was, where's the beef? That's my sort of spin on that. So where's the proof? Looking for some really solid, irrefutable proof that what I'm stuck on, the story I'm telling myself, the thing that's spinning or ruminating, there's actually some concrete proof to back it up, right? So you come up with yours, your sayings, your expression, whatever, your way to remind you to question it. But remember that if you leave it unchecked, that story will grow and morph and become something it doesn't need to be. So question it, have an internal dialogue about the facts, right? So that's number 2, question it and have that dialogue. Number 3 is what we call cognitive reappraisal. So we want to shift our thoughts to shift our emotions and our feelings, right? So this is what some people call, my mom actually says this to me a lot, making lemons out of lemonade. That's one way to phrase it, right? But you want to shift your thoughts to shift your emotions and feelings. So thinking about, okay, this thing didn't go well, right? Or I'm assuming that this thing didn't go well. What can be some silver linings? What good can come from it? And I always go back to, okay, what can I learn from this, right? Sometimes it helps to go back to the, how bad is the worst case scenario really, so that you can minimize the negatives. So that cognitive reappraisal, again, that's shifting your thoughts to shift your emotions and feelings. So that's shifting from that assumption of the negative to looking at what good can come from it, looking at how you can minimize the negatives or look at the negatives a little bit more differently. And another way to do that is to shift to gratitude. So I think the more that I've practiced gratitude in my life in general, the easier it is for me to shift out of a rumination when I recognize that's what's happening. So again, number 3 is cognitive reappraisal. And number 4 is, like, again, get it out of your head, okay? Don't just let it whirl and tell yourself you shouldn't be worried about this, because that's definitely not going to help you stop the rumination and stop the spinning of the story, okay? Write it down. If you are a journaler, like, write it down as a statement. I think blank, I'm assuming blank, I believe blank, whatever that is, right? Not if it helps you to journal, go for it. But sometimes just very clearly saying, writing, vocalizing, thinking consciously what the thing is in a concise sort of statement makes it a lot easier for you to shine that light on it. All right. But get it out of your head. As long as you let it whirl without really stopping and thinking about it and questioning it. And, you just, as long as you let it live between your ears, it is probably going to turn into more than it needs to and cause you way more angst than it needs to, or than it's worth, right? So get it out of your head in whatever way is comfortable for you. If you're a verbal processor, say it out loud, voice record it in your phone. And I'm not talking about telling the story over and over again to anybody who will listen. That just reinforces the story. That just reinforces the energy and will keep it stuck. I'm talking, get the worry, get the thought, get the notion out of your head so that you can look at it with your logical, analytical brain and shift that way. Okay. And then number 5 is, and I'm just going to say it, sorry guys, excuse my French, but this is an expression I say all the time, right? Shit happens, now what? Okay, so this thing happened, or I'm assuming it's happened. Now what can I do about it? So it puts you back into kind of problem solving, proactive mode. Okay, this didn't go well, or I'm making these assumptions about this thing. What can I do about it? Right? If I'm concerned that there's been a miscommunication, the now what is, am I going to pick up the phone? Am I going to try to meet with that person and talk with them, like in real life rather than via text or some other kind of flat communication that isn't going to help a misunderstanding? Is there something I can do to mitigate, any negative repercussions that I'm assuming are going to happen? So that now what piece is, there's an element of, okay, this happened. What am I going to do about it? That can be a really helpful shift out of that rumination, out of that stuck, out of that, sort of negative spiraling into a more proactive, problem solving and analytical kind of way that you want to use your brain, right? So just remember, guys, you can't trust everything you think. I often tell my clients, just because you think it doesn't make it true. Know that it's part of how you're wired. Expect to get stuck on things sometimes. Expect ruminations. Expect the stories to spin, those inner stories every now and then, right? Recognize it when it happens, and then look for practical ways to address it, like in your actual life. Again, don't just tell yourself, I shouldn't be thinking, or I shouldn't be worried, or you need to actually address it. So I would love to know what works for you guys. I would love to know how you get yourselves unstuck when you are spinning an inner story, when you are ruminating. Let me know. Share it in the comments here, or join us in the ADHD Support Talk community on Facebook. But let us know what works for you. What have you tried? What do you find helpful? Is there something you do that helps you get unstuck? Whatever it is that you share, I'm sure is going to be something that was going to be very helpful for someone else and help them get control of their inner stories and their ruminations. But again, if you are getting stuck, on something, or if you are stuck on something and it's causing disruption in your life, if it's negatively impacting the quality of your life, please make sure you talk to your doctor or a licensed mental health professional. There are lots of degrees of this, and when it gets to a degree where it's negatively impacting your life, it absolutely is something that needs to be dealt with. And really, you don't need to suffer. There are solutions for these kinds of problems. Okay, I hope you guys found something in there that was helpful. Again, join us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook group to share your thoughts, share your ideas, ask questions, connect with Tara and I, and let us know, what you find helpful, what works for you when you get yourself stuck. We would love to know that. And if you found this episode helpful, or you find that podcast in general helpful or enjoy it, we would really appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review on iTunes. The more 5-star reviews we get, the more people can find us easily and get the help and support that they need. So again, I hope you found this helpful. I want to thank you all again for your attention, as always. I appreciate it when you spend your time and your energy and your attention with me. And I will catch you next time on ADHD Support Talk. Bye-bye.